All right, we are live. Hello, Fountainhead, Rhode Island community. Erica Busillo Adams, board member here with the incredible and wonderful Carrie Majewski. And before I introduce Carrie and we begin our conversation today, I just want to quickly thank our sponsor, Cross Country Mortgage, for helping to make these spotlights possible for Fountainhead, Rhode Island this year, and also our panel events. So thank you and welcome, Carrie, to your Fountainhead, Rhode Island Community Spotlight. I can't wait to talk with you.
I'm so excited to be here.
I will let you do a quick intro of yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your personal career journey, where you are now, and also the origin story of Women in Leadership Nexus, of which you are the founder.
Yeah, so I am so delighted to be here, Erica. I was counting down the days to be able to be with you guys, and such a huge fan of Fountainhead. I still remember being all together at the Guild. I think it was the last event maybe I had been to, and you guys throw just such wonderful events. And so for me, I have been in kind of marketing, communication, storytelling my entire career. At my core, I love people and I love connecting, and I love the power of just community and coming together to really affect change. So I've really always aligned my career to thinking about what is the impact I want to have on the world, mostly with the business and leadership landscape, and then how can I work with and for and collaborate with fantastic partners and fellow change champions to affect that. So very grateful to have been afforded really the opportunity to follow an entrepreneurial dream that I always had of starting the Women in Leadership Nexus and bringing together trailblazing women now all over the country to really explore what can happen when we positively disrupt and challenge and fight back against some of those business constructs. And then also still being able to have my marketing career leading marketing for a local technology and advisory services firm. So just a little bit about me.
Love it. Well, we're thrilled to have you here today. That Guild event seems like it was about 10 years ago, which is how we're all probably feeling these days about events in the before times. So let me jump in a little bit to Women in Leadership Nexus specifically. And I'd love for you to, for folks who are watching right now who maybe don't know about it, maybe a little bit more about what it is you are, what Nexus is, what Nexus's mission is. But also, thinking about women in leadership. And, I know that Nexus truly believes that women have this ability to really fundamentally alter outdated, backwards, right, leadership models and structures for the better. So we'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that, and also what the future of leadership looks like, for you specifically, especially with women at the helm, and how can women really step into their power as leaders in this time?
Yeah. So at my core, I really believe in game-changing, extraordinary leadership. And I talk about this quite a bit. So those who have been following the Nexus movement for the last few years, they really know that that's part of my motivating why is I believe when you meet game-changing leaders, it is magnetic. It is unlike anything you've ever experienced because that person is subscribing to a set of principles that have typically been left behind or not celebrated in the business world. So these are the individuals that are so focused on creating, collaborative, co-creative, empowered, vulnerable, authentic cultures around them and ways of thinking. And they're constantly in a curiosity mode. They're always thinking about how can I challenge everything? How can I reimagine the potential for myself, for the business world, for the landscape? And if you are so lucky to meet this person, you don't stand a chance. Like you are going to be magnetically pulled to them. Everything in you is going to shift. Your entire belief system, the dreams that you have for your leadership, they go up to a next level. And I want game-changing leadership to be the norm. And I don't think it is. I actually think that most of us, if we're lucky, we work with good people, sometimes maybe great people, but very rarely do we meet this once in a lifetime leader. So I started the Women in Leadership Nexus in Rhode Island 5 years ago to say, let's bring women together. Let's commit to saying we are not going to wait to meet and experience the game-changing leader because our set of circumstance might be such that we never meet them. And instead, let's be that leader. Let's choose to be the one that everybody else meets and has their world rocked because of the way that we activate new thoughts in them. And in so doing, this is how we start to shift the business landscape. So I really believe we are at this critical time in business. We're in a revolution, by the way, right? With everything changing around us, that game changing leadership has to be what we demand. It has to be a non negotiable moving forward, that we have all decided to no longer tolerate certain behaviors to promote others and to start to really reimagine what the world could be. So at Nexus, that's the work that we're doing in community and in partnership, is helping women not only drive their career velocity at a huge speed that they've never experienced, but also start to shift this thing.
Yes, I love the word that you said, co-creation. That's really resonated with me, I think, during this time in particular. And just like being your own game-changing leader. Because we all have that, I think, within us. We come up against and interact with systems all the time. We have these feelings, this doesn't need to work this way, or it shouldn't work this way, or I have this whole other idea about how this can work well and better for everyone involved, and really, not just drive business forward, but create real lasting global change in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's broken. Like, I want to be really clear. The
Yeah.
business world is so fundamentally broken. We are playing by a construct and a system that was set hundreds of years ago with specific parameters to keep certain groups, down and not being promoted, not having the career velocity that they deserve. And we have to unpack everything. We have to be questioning every way in which we choose, the decisions we make about our careers, the pathways that we open to ourselves and to others. And we have work to do. Like, there's a lot of progress that's been made, and I think that especially 2020 kind of put it in a faster lane with future of work and the way that our minds have changed. But we have just begun. There is so much we have to do.
There is. I agree. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the future of work, which is a very big topic right now, I think, and on a lot of people's minds. And we've talked about before, maybe there being a generational disconnect here too, perhaps, in how we're thinking of work, how we're defining success, how we want to work, what efficient work looks like, what it looks like to work in teams and in collaboration and co-creation. And I'm wondering, from your vantage point, especially looking at the last 15 months, what do you think are maybe some of the greatest lessons we've learned during this period of the pandemic? What do we absolutely need to bring forward, thinking about virtual work, but also thinking about, and we've talked about this too, the great resignation. It's happening, we're seeing it, people are leaving. People are really starting to, as we were talking about earlier, own their power and their own career paths in a way that I think is shocking to, right, business as is, capital B. And, so what do you think, and this is for folks who are maybe on their own career paths, but also for business leaders, what are some things that everyone should be considering taking forward into the next year, the next several years, that you think we've learned over the past 15 months?
Yeah, it's so interesting to rewind and try to remember what we were even thinking 15 months ago. And I think for a lot of us, that's why we remember where we were, right? We remember the Guild event for FountainHead, or we remember the last Nexus event that we were a part of, because it's almost like our minds preserved this moment in time for us. And our mind was aware that something was about to happen. So we can recall those moments with such great clarity. And then we experienced unthinkable, tumultuous times and hardship and trauma and loss of life and inequity that was just so blatant to us. So I think, what's interesting is I wrote a letter to myself. It was April of 2020, because I sensed the question you just asked, Erica, which is, what am I going to want to remember? What are the lessons that are going to be learned? And we were in such an acute heightened state in April of last year. And I got my letter a year later, so 2 months ago. And it was wild to revisit with that version of me, and to feel, her source of stress, like we all had, and the fears and the worries, but also the clarity, to your point, the clarity that was starting to become abundantly clear of where I wanted to be on the other side of this, what I was seeing that I wanted to commit to not unseeing when we started to get back to some version of Next. And my biggest thing that I hope everyone listening really remembers is, we learned a lot over the last 15 months, to your point, but it is human nature to forget it. I mean, literally, we just talked about it before we hopped on this call, that we're like back to life because of how the human brain is wired. We're trying to get back to rhythm and routine and the way that it was. But if you think about the word return, you can't return. You cannot go back. You have to go forward. You have to build anew. And I think one of the biggest lessons in the last 15 months is you learned about what you want. You learned about what you are no longer willing to tolerate in the business world, what choices you want to make about your career, whether you own your own business or whether you work for somebody else. It was very clear, most likely, the types of people you want to surround yourself with and how you're going to get your stimulation and your fulfillment. Now comes the hard part. How are you acting on that? Because the brain wants you to return. The fight is going to be fighting through that to remember those points of clarity. And when we talk about future of work and the great resignation, I mean, oh my goodness, it's everyone's feeling it. Everybody's really tense right now, especially if you're an employer, especially if you own your own business, because everybody is in motion. We went from really sheltering in place, both physically and emotionally, to now we can make choice again and we feel that there's more options. So they're predicting what 40% of the workforce is going to change their jobs in the next year. And some are opting out altogether. So this is wild. And I hope that the biggest takeaway in the 15 months is you learned about what you need. Now honor it and now take action in honor of that.
And I think for, that's a really powerful message, I think, for business leaders and businesses and companies and organizations as a whole, too, that this is happening, that this is where your people are, this is what they're thinking about. So I think, maybe taking the lens of someone who's running a business or executive leadership, how then, I think that those folks are probably, they all have their own personal experience, right, with what's happened the past 15 months. And I do think you're right. I can see it. I can see leaders just wanting to fall back into the rhythm of what was before. And I don't think that's possible. And frankly, I think that those organizations and businesses are going to be left behind and they are going to lose talent and they're going to lose opportunity and they're going to become less innovative. And so for those folks, what are some things that they can do as leaders to really co-create with their staff and help to elevate staff members who are realizing, I want to work in this way, or I'm more productive in this way, or I need this kind of flexibility, and also looking at it through the lens of greater diversity in the workplace, which we desperately need to.
Yes, I love how you describe co-create with your staff. The biggest mistake every employer, I fear, is about to make is assuming. And it is something that keeps me up because in my line of work with Nexus and the way that I am involved in the community, I'm talking to dozens and dozens of people every week. And I always ask the same question because I'm like convinced I want to run a little market study on this. And I always say, has your employer asked you what you need and want for reentry? And I can tell you, Erica, like 3 people have said yes out of hundreds that I've been talking to. And we first started talking about reentry in Nexus in January. We first started saying, let's start teeing up the reentry conversation. Let's try to be the agents of change to ask the business world to start to think about reentry and not return, not even using the words return to work. And the assumptions that people are making are evident by them not talking to their employees. And it's not everybody, right? There's amazing companies out there. We always know there's exceptions and we celebrate those leaders. We are so grateful for them. But I want to know why every employer is not as their first line of protecting and defending their employees, saying to each individual, Erica, what do you need to reenter? What do you want to reenter? How can we support you in that? And then recognizing that what the next person wants might be completely different. And then we're not assuming, we're not projecting, to your point, what we experienced as the leader for the last 15 months on our employees. We've heard from them firsthand what they need for psychological, physical, and emotional safety. And then we're building constructs to support them. And then the second thing that you said about diversity, there's another big challenge that's about to come with hybrid work, because if we get rid of the assumption issue and we say, okay, all employers, go talk to your people, let's get the data, let's really be mindful of meeting our people where they need to be. It's very easy to say, we'll give them that. We'll give them hybrid. We'll give them in person. We'll give them what they want. But there's another layer to hybrid work, as we all know, which is equity, right? So when you create hybrid work environments, how do you ensure that people don't get penalized for staying home because you gave it to them. So you're thinking, all right, good job, I did it. But now you have to make sure that there's equity in that those that come to work don't start to get preferential treatment or favoritism or are playing the game a little bit better, and vice versa in either direction. So I've been, thinking a lot about how can businesses create new group norms and really start to reestablish the team manifesto for culture to ensure that if there is a hybrid workforce or a diversified workforce, putting some new parameters. As an example, if you have a leadership team meeting and 2 people are remote because they've chosen that and 8 are in person, that meeting should be done remote where everybody has to be home, because you don't want 8 people in a conference room all feeling a certain way and 2 people on their computer screen. So that's kind of the 2 things I see. Is the first is, let's not make assumptions. Let's go talk to our employees and make sure we know what they need. And the second is, let's make sure that we're building in pathways that don't then penalize them for the very thing that they advocated and the very thing that we granted them.
Absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of the folks on this call who are parents can relate for example, like I might have maternity leave, but if I take it, what does that mean for my career? And that shouldn't be a part of the thought process.
No, I know, and I don't know if you saw this Skim article that just came out. It was very focused on millennial women, but it's all women, right? And they were saying, we know there was an epidemic during a pandemic where women left the workforce at a clip that we hadn't seen since, I think it was like the 1980s. And I think in what it was December of 2020, all of the job losses were women, 100%. So we also have this huge issue of how do we get our women back to work, but our women are dealing with parenting responsibilities, aging parents, and a whole host of other competing responsibilities at a greater clip than men. So the article is saying, how do we protect our women? Because if our women have seen the hybrid world or the virtual world and they want to choose that, but the men in your organization want to go back, again, be careful. Can't play favorites there, right? Have to make sure there's equity. So it's going to be a really big, interesting human experiment. And I think what's so unique about what we all experienced is any way that you want to work should be okay. So if you want the in office, that's great, right? Like that's amazing. If you want a combo, that's good too. But it's just, I think, becoming more employee driven and centric in a way it never has before.
I agree. And I think that's great. And I
Yeah,
think it's going to drive innovation
it will.
and productivity and the bottom line, actually.
Has a direct impact, right? I think what's so interesting to me are the companies that have high performers that have always been highly accountable. They're making money for the organization. They're in the incubation think tanks. And yet the immediate assumption is, let's return. Let's go back to exactly as it was. And what we have to remember as individuals is we are not who we were. So who we were 15 months ago is not who we are today. And we are all different people. So there are people who might have been one way pre-pandemic that are going to be, either the same or different after, but we have to reintroduce ourselves. I actually think we have to meet each other all over again.
I completely agree. And we were just talking about that too before we hopped on, this idea of meeting people in person for the first time who we've developed relationships with during the pandemic, reintroducing ourselves to people that we haven't physically seen in almost 2 years. All of that is very real. And yes.
I don't know if you've thought about this, but I feel like there's this group of people now that know us pre-pandemic, right? Like they know our pre-pandemic version of self. Then there's the people, as you said, that we met during the pandemic. And then there's the people that we haven't even met yet that are going to become friends and colleagues and whatnot. And all versions of us matter. So all versions of us deserve celebration and deserve an introduction to. But being cognizant that any version of us that's showing up today is a beautiful version to get to know.
I want to talk a little bit more, we have 10 minutes left. And for folks who are curious about Nexus and how to get involved with you all and with the movement, how do they do that?
Yes. So we really sit at the intersection of 3 core dimensions: leadership development, self-education, and relationship building. So we're building a movement to say, let's come together at the nexus or the intersection of these really key dimensions of helping us accelerate our leadership potential and really raise the bar on our dreams, on the pathways that we see for ourselves, on the doors that we want to open. We come together in a virtual first format. So here we are talking about future of work. We are near centering where we need to head, which is global community. I've always been a big believer that your community has to be bigger than your 5-mile radius. And if we are going to rely on in-person as the only way that we can advance our careers or form connection, we are in an old paradigm still. So at Nexus, we're really saying, let's build the model that we believe in, which is virtual first for learnings, experiences, connections. Let's build relationships across borders and make that a part of our leadership philosophy and style, and then use in person for enhanced connection points to really even celebrate how great it is when you are in person. So anyone from around the country, we have a few international members even can join. We do programs, I would say, about every 4 to 6 weeks. So there's a huge velocity of programs. And, we've really been even tackling the issues that I think historically the business world really tried to stay away from. Just this week, we did an entire program around let's end workplace abuse. And it was really focused on a topic that, though it affects millions, we don't talk about it. We are like really conditioned to being silent around that. And that's the type of just pushing the envelope a little bit with Nexus that we want to do, is to say that we can no longer talk about leadership without talking about human issues. They are completely one and the same. So whether we are talking about what it means to be actively anti-racist and really challenging the notion of what racial equity and justice needs to look like in the business world, to how do we combat abuse, to how do we look at still patriarchal tendencies that seep into the business construct, that is the only way we get to game-changing leaders. So if you are out there and you're a disruptor and you are a trailblazer and somebody that wakes up at night with a million thoughts about the change that you want to see and the way that you want to advance your career, we would love for you to join our movement.
I love it. And how do folks do that? Do they go to your website?
Yes. So go to wilnexus.com, WILNEX. Oh, this is going to text me. NEXUS.com. I think I spelled that right. Geez. And yes, and check us out. Like really, spend some time on the website. Our YouTube channel has some great videos about our mission and our why. And if you have that kind of kindred fire in you that's just burning every day for just really leaving an imprint on this world and starting to build the business world of tomorrow, recognizing that we're in a new paradigm and we can't wait to meet you.
And I know some truly incredible human beings that are a part of Nexus. So I can vouch that it's an amazing community of people. Yeah. Before we run out of time, for anyone watching who might still be in college or maybe just graduated or who is just starting to embark on their career path, do you have any thoughts for those folks who maybe, completed their education during this time, are recognizing and are probably frankly ahead of us? I know that generation is ahead of the curve in terms of the future of work and what they want to see and being anti-racist and really working toward this kind of change. How do you think they should approach their early stages of their career that might be different advice than maybe what we received back in the day? And how do you think they can push forward, what they know to be how they want to work and the change they want to see?
What an amazing question. I actually think we're about to enter the most exciting phase of work. So I think though we're losing a little bit of sleep over the Great Resignation and reentry and all of that. I see such promise and unbelievable change that's about to happen. And this next generation, oh my goodness, we need them. Like they are so much our future. They are the ones that are going to be the new pace setters that we're going to be keeping up with. So if you're just embarking in your career or your even later career, but in your own kind of revolution right now, I think it's realizing that we have choice in a way that we never did before. And as the work paradigm starts to shift in the leadership landscape, we're opening up new possibilities for how we want to spend our time and the way that we want to use our skill sets to leave an imprint on this world. So get creative. Think about the ways that you want to bring your gifts to not just organizations, but your community and civic engagement and philanthropy. Think about how you want your kind of typical week to be constructed, because there's no 9 to 5 anymore. And again, any company that still believes that, to your point, Erica, they're not going to be here in another year. So there is such a revolution right now that this is the time to really push us even further than we thought. I mean, you all, if you're watching and you're, in college or you're graduating, you lived through a time where we had to reimagine higher education and public schools and private schools. So those learnings are going to have a definite impact on our business world for the better. I'm excited. I really see that 1 year from now, it's what you said. I predict that the companies that used to be kind of best in class and progressive, they're going to get like leapfrogged by these up and coming companies, startups, mid markets that just get it and that are subscribing to these game changing leadership principles.
They're going to attract the talent.
Hey, it's a talent war, so we got to get creative.
And they should attract the talent, right? It just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, we spend all of our time at work, right? We've got to love what we do. And I'm so lucky. I love what I do in all parts of my career. And I always just try to advocate to women, to men, to everybody that remember that matters. Like, remember that it matters that the people that you spend all your time with and you're collaborating with, they should light you up. They should bring out this new version of you that you didn't even know was there. And that's when we know that we're in a really special place in our time.
Absolutely. Well, we only have a few minutes left. If folks want to connect with you directly, how do they do that?
Yes, please connect with me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I'm trying to get better at Instagram, so you can find me there as well. I would love to connect with you. I am one of those people who used to get about 7 coffees a day with people in person, and now I do both. So I always love connecting with new people. Would love to know what lights you up and the vision that you have in your heart.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Carrie. Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I love every conversation we have.
Thank you. You guys really
inspired. And thank you all for joining us out in Facebook land and virtual land. And just stay tuned for more spotlights coming up in the next several months. And Carrie, thank you again. Definitely check out Nexus. It's amazing. And we will see you all soon.